The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Ivory cardstock so thick it felt like money in my hands. The kind of paper that announced wealth before you even read the words embossed across its surface. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Caldwell request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their son Preston James Caldwell to Miss Sophia Marie Williams. I held it for a long time, this expensive rectangle of hope and exclusion, feeling its weight, its promise, its lie. Because tucked inside, in an envelope smaller than the invitation itself, was a note, handwritten. My daughter's handwriting, the cursive I'd paid for through 12 years of private school tuition. Mom, it would be better if you didn't come. The Caldwells are very traditional about wedding protocol, and they've already finalized the seating arrangements. Your presence might create awkwardness. I hope you understand. The money transfers should cover everything. Thank you for that. S. 3 months later, I stood in the parking lot of the Caldwell Country Club, watching caterers carry in food I'd paid for, florists arrange flowers I'd purchased, watching my daughter's wedding begin without me. And 14 minutes after that, I watched it end. Hello, dear listeners. Before I share this story with you, I ask that you please support our channel. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share your thoughts in the comments about family, sacrifice, and the price we pay for love that isn't returned. Your support means everything to us. Now let me tell you about the day I learned that some doors, once closed, should stay that way. 58 years old, and I woke that morning the same way I'd woken for 40 years, to the smell of industrial detergent and the memory of steam. Even on my days off, even when the laundromat was closed, even when there was no reason to think about work, the scent lived in my skin, my hair, my dreams. 40 years of washing other people's clothes had made me part laundry myself, bleach and fabric softener mixed with whatever passes for a soul in a woman who spent most of her life bent over washing machines. The apartment was quiet, small. The kind of quiet that comes when you've lived alone long enough to forget what it sounds like when someone else breathes in the next room. My daughter used to sleep in the second bedroom, back when she was small enough to think this place was home instead of something to escape. Back when she'd wake up on Saturday mornings and pad into the kitchen in her cartoon pajamas, asking what was for breakfast, not yet understanding that breakfast was whatever we could afford after rent and tuition and the endless grinding cost of trying to climb out of Southside Chicago, one generation at a time. I made coffee in the Mr. Coffee machine I'd bought at a yard sale in 1998. Its plastic cracked, but its will still strong. The cup I poured into had been Sophia's, a Mother's Day gift from 4th grade, painted with her small handprints and the words, "World's Best Mom," in paint that was chipping away year by year, letter by letter. Soon it would just say, Mom. Maybe not even that. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg I'd never gotten around to fixing, and looked out the window at the street below, 47th Street. Not the worst part of the South Side, not the best, just middle, always middle. The place where people work hard enough to not fall further, but never hard enough to get out. I'd been one of those people my entire adult life, working, climbing, sacrificing, and for what? For an invitation with a note tucked inside telling me to stay home. Williams' Wash and Fold wasn't much to look at from the outside. Squat brick building, windows that needed replacing, a sign I'd painted myself 23 years ago when I'd finally saved enough to buy the place from Mr. Kim, who was retiring back to Korea with money he'd made washing the clothes of people like me. But inside, it was clean, always clean. The machines hummed their reliable song, the floors were mopped every night, and the folding tables were wiped down between customers. I'd built something here. Not wealth, God knows there's no getting rich off a laundromat in the South Side, but stability, dignity, a business that was mine. Every Friday, I deposited my earnings into 2 accounts, The first was for rent, utilities, food, the basics, the survival account. The second was for Sophia, always for Sophia. I'd started that account when she was 3 years old, putting in $20 a week, then 30, then 50 when I bought the laundromat and could afford to dream a little bigger. By the time she was ready for college, there was $43,000 in that account. Not enough for Harvard, where she wanted to go, but enough for a state school with a good program. She'd gotten into Northwestern on partial scholarship. The rest, $28,000 a year, came from that account, plus the hours I added to my week, plus the machines I fixed myself instead of calling a repairman, plus every small economy and sacrifice that you make when you love someone more than you love comfort. She graduated summa cum laude, got a job at a consulting firm in downtown Chicago, moved to an apartment in Lincoln Park that cost more per month than I'd paid for my first car. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, she stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped being my daughter and started being Sophia Williams, young professional, who'd worked very hard to sand away the edges of Southside from her voice, her manners, her life. I told myself it was natural, that children grow up and away, that I should be proud she'd made something of herself. And I was proud, I was. But pride and hurt can live in the same heart, taking turns squeezing until you're not sure which one you're feeling anymore. The first time Sophia brought Preston home, I'd made Sunday dinner. Not just any dinner, the Sunday dinner. The one I'd grown up eating at my grandmother's house in Bronzeville, back when Sunday dinner meant something, when family meant showing up and staying. Fried chicken, golden and perfect. Mac and cheese, the kind you bake with 5 different cheeses and a crust on top. Collard greens slow cooked with ham hock. Cornbread from my grandmother's recipe, the one I knew by heart because she'd never written it down, just taught me through watching and doing, and the kind of knowing that passes between women in kitchens across generations. Peach cobbler for dessert, still warm, ice cream melting into its crust. I'd set the table with the good dishes, the ones I'd gotten as a wedding present 30 years ago and barely used because they were too nice for every day and there was never anyone to impress. Until today. Preston Caldwell arrived in a silver BMW that looked like it had never seen a pothole, wearing a polo shirt and khakis that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He was handsome in that catalog way, square jaw, perfect teeth, the kind of haircut that costs $60 and looks effortless. White. Not that I cared about that. Not really. Love who you love, I'd always said. But I saw how Sophia watched me when she introduced him, saw the tiny tension in her shoulders, the way she'd code-switched even harder than usual, her voice pitched up and smooth, every trace of Southside scrubbed out like a stain she was ashamed of. "Mom, this is Preston. Preston, this is my mother, Rose." "Mrs. Williams, so nice to finally meet you." His handshake was firm, professional, the kind you give a business associate. "Call me Rose. Come in, dinner's ready." They sat at my small table, Marcus looking around the apartment with the kind of polite interest you give to a museum exhibit. Curious, but not connected. Observing, but not participating. I served the food, plate after plate of everything I'd made with love and memory, and the hope that this meal might build a bridge between my daughter's past and her future. Preston took a small portion of chicken, smaller portion of mac and cheese, politely declined the collard greens. "I'm actually trying to eat clean right now," he explained, smiling apologetically. "Training for a marathon, but it all looks amazing." Sophia's plate was similarly sparse. "Mom makes incredible soul food," she said, the words soul food sounding strange in her mouth, like she was describing something from another country, another life. "I just can't eat like this anymore. You know, work. Trying to stay in shape." I looked at the feast I'd prepared, the hours of cooking, the memories I'd tried to serve alongside the meal, and I understood. I wasn't feeding my daughter and her boyfriend. I was feeding strangers who were being polite about not wanting what I offered. So, Mrs. Williams, Rose, Sophia tells me you own a laundromat. Preston had perfect manners, I'd give him that. Perfect manners and perfect discomfort, trying to find conversation in a place that felt foreign to him. 23 years now. Williams's Wash and Fold over on 47th. That's incredible. Small business ownership is really the backbone of America. He said it like he'd read it in a book about bootstraps and grit, not like he'd ever actually known anyone who'd pulled themselves up by those bootstraps. Sophia shifted in her seat. Preston's father is Senator Caldwell, Connecticut. I don't follow politics much, I said, which was a lie. I voted in every election, knew exactly who Senator Robert Caldwell was. Old money Republican, the kind who talked about urban communities like they were nature documentaries instead of places where actual people lived. He's considering a presidential run in 2 years, Preston said, and there was pride in his voice, the easy pride of someone who'd never had to earn anything. The dinner lasted 45 minutes. They ate little, praised much, and left quickly, Preston citing an early meeting, Sophia hugging me briefly, her expensive perfume, something French and floral, masking any scent of home that might have clung to her. After they left, I sat at my small table, looking at the plates of untouched food, and I felt something shift inside me. Not break, not yet, just shift. A small adjustment in how I understood my relationship with my daughter. She was moving up, and I wasn't invited. The engagement happened 3 months later. Sophia called me from what sounded like a restaurant, noise and laughter in the background, her voice bright with champagne and happiness. "Mom? Mom, he proposed! We're engaged!" "Oh, baby." I pressed the phone tight against my ear, wanting to be closer to her joy, even if I couldn't be part of it. "Congratulations. When?" "Just now. We're at Alinea. God, Mom, the ring is gorgeous. 3 carats, platinum setting. I can't even. I'm so happy." "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart." A pause. Background noise. Then, "We're thinking next June. Garden wedding at the Caldwell Estate in Greenwich. It's going to be beautiful." Greenwich, Connecticut. 1,000 miles from 47th Street, in more ways than distance. "That sounds lovely." "There's just one thing, Mom." The shift in her voice, the little catch that meant difficult conversation ahead. "What is it?" "The wedding is going to be expensive. The Caldwells are handling most of it. They're very generous. But there are some costs that traditionally fall to the bride's family." "And I know you've always said you'd help with my wedding when the time came." I had said that. Back when she was 16, trying on prom dresses, spinning in front of my mirror, asking if she looked pretty enough. "Of course I'll help. What do you need?" She named a number. $47,000. My savings account. The one I'd been building for 25 years. The one that was supposed to be for emergencies, for retirement, for the life I'd have after 40 years of washing other people's clothes. That's everything I have, Sophia." "I know, Mom. I know. And I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. But this wedding, it's not just about Preston and me. It's about both families. The Caldwells are very prominent. Senator Caldwell's colleagues will be there. Press, probably. It needs to be perfect." "What does the money cover?" "The dress, mostly, and the flowers. The Caldwells are very particular about the flowers. They want this specific florist from New York who does all the society weddings. And the cake, and the band, and— Mom, I know it's a lot, but this is my wedding, my one wedding. And after everything you've done for me, everything you've sacrificed, don't you want it to be beautiful?" The guilt was expertly applied, barely noticeable, like expensive perfume. "Of course I do." "So you'll help?" I looked around my small apartment, thought about 40 years of early mornings and late nights, thought about the account I'd built, dollar by dollar, thinking someday I might retire somewhere with a small yard, maybe a garden. Thought about my daughter, who I'd raised alone after her father walked out, who I'd loved with everything I had. "Yes," I said, "I'll help." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. I love you." She hung up before I could say it back. The wire transfers happened over the next 3 months. $5,000 for the dress from some boutique in Manhattan, where they served champagne while you tried on gowns worth more than cars. $12,000 for flowers, roses and peonies and something called garden roses that apparently were different from regular roses and cost 3 times as much. $8,000 for the band, a jazz ensemble that had played the Kennedy Center. $14,000 for the venue deposit, the chairs, the linens, the lighting design. $3,000 for the cake, 8 tiers, fondant flowers, gold leaf. $2,000 for the photographer, some artist from Brooklyn who shot in black and white and charged by the hour. $3,000 for the videographer, the invitations, the programs, the favors, Jordan almonds in little white boxes tied with ribbon. Each transfer, I watched my account decrease. Each transfer, Sophia's texts were brief. "Got it. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. Don't worry, you're going to love it." But she never asked if I could afford it, never asked what I was giving up, never seemed to consider that $47,000 represented something more than just numbers on a screen. It represented time. 40 years of time, measured in loads of laundry, in quarters collected from machines, in backs bent over folding tables, in hands cracked from industrial soap. She never asked, and I never told her. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We give everything, and we smile while doing it, even when the giving costs us everything we've saved, even when we're not sure what we're saving for anymore. Myrytu dalsze prямо сейчас, следующая сцена. The invitation with the note. Rose's connections to vendors, church community. The freeze moment. The phone call, 14 minutes. Wedding collapse. Epilogue. The wedding I paid for, but wasn't invited to. The invitation arrived 6 weeks before the wedding. I'd been expecting it, had been checking my mailbox with the kind of anticipation that feels both hopeful and pathetic, like a dog waiting for its owner to come home, even though the owner stopped caring years ago. When it finally came, I held it for a long time before opening it. The envelope was thick, expensive. My name and address written in calligraphy so perfect it looked printed. Mrs. Rose Williams. Not Mom, not family, just Mrs. Rose Williams. Like I was a distant relative or a business associate, someone who needed formal acknowledgement but not genuine invitation. Inside, the invitation itself was a work of art. Ivory cardstock, embossed lettering, tissue paper protecting the expensive words. Everything about it whispered money, whispered exclusion, whispered, "You don't belong here, but we're too polite to say it directly." Mr. and Mrs. Robert Caldwell request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their son, Preston James Caldwell, to Miss Sophia Marie Williams, Saturday the 23rd of June at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Caldwell Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. Reception to follow. And tucked inside, in a smaller envelope, handwritten on matching stationery, "Mom, it would be better if you didn't come. The Caldwells are very traditional about wedding protocol, and they've already finalized the seating arrangements. Your presence might create awkwardness. They don't really understand our situation. And honestly, with all the press and Senator Caldwell's colleagues, it's just easier if you sit this one out. I know you'll understand. You've always been so good about understanding. The money transfers have been processed. Everything is covered. Thank you for that, truly. I'll send photos afterward. S." I read it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, each reading making the words more real and less bearable. Your presence might create awkwardness. Our situation. Sit this one out. I'd given her $47,000, every penny I'd saved over 25 years. And she was asking me not to come to her wedding because I might embarrass her? Because a mother who owned a laundromat on 47th Street didn't fit the aesthetic of a Connecticut garden wedding. Because I wasn't polished enough, wasn't wealthy enough, wasn't white enough to stand next to the Caldwells and their society friends and smile for photographs that would probably end up in the Greenwich Times Society pages. I sat at my kitchen table for a very long time, holding that invitation, holding that note, feeling something inside me shift and settle and harden. Something in me didn't break. It froze. Solid, clear, final. Like water turning to ice in a pipe. Like concrete setting around rebar. Like a decision made so completely that there's no room left for doubt. My daughter had made a choice. Now I would make mine. Williams's Wash and Fold wasn't just a laundromat. It was a hub, a gathering place. The kind of business that becomes part of the community because I'd made it that way, deliberately, carefully, over 23 years of knowing people's names and remembering their stories, and being the kind of business owner who showed up not just for profit, but for connection. I knew everyone, and everyone knew me. The flower shop 3 blocks over, Petals and Stems, was run by Lorraine Jackson, who'd been bringing her laundry to me for 18 years. We'd raised our daughters at the same time, compared notes on homework and boys, and the exhausting work of being a single mother. Her daughter was a nurse now. Mine was marrying into Connecticut aristocracy and asking me not to attend. The bakery on the corner, Sweet Mercy, belonged to Deacon James Miller, who'd lost his wife to cancer 6 years ago and brought his church clothes in every Saturday for pressing. We'd talked about grief, about faith, about the way God sometimes feels absent right when you need him most. I'd gone to his wife's funeral. He'd sent flowers when Sophia graduated from Northwestern. The catering company that had made my church famous for its potlucks, Sister's Kitchen, was run by Patricia Washington and her actual sisters, Gloria and May. They'd built their business the same way I'd built mine, one satisfied customer at a time, one referral at a time, one community event at a time. I'd done their laundry for free when they were just starting out, when every dollar counted. They'd never forgotten. The band everyone hired for weddings and celebrations, Smooth Sounds, was led by Jerome Tucker, whose son had been in Sophia's class at Southside Academy. I'd helped Jerome with rent once when his wife left and the band bookings were slow. He'd paid me back in full, with interest he insisted on, even though I'd told him not to worry about it. These were my people, my community, the network I'd built, not through money or social climbing, but through 40 years of showing up, being reliable, treating people with dignity, remembering birthdays, asking about grandchildren, caring when caring wasn't profitable. And my daughter had hired all of them for her wedding, without telling them who she was, without mentioning that the bride's mother, who would be writing the checks, was the woman who'd known them for decades, who'd helped them through hard times, who'd celebrated their successes. She'd hired them through intermediaries, through the Caldwell family's event planner, through emails and contracts that kept everything professional and distant. She'd hired my friends to cater, arrange flowers, bake the cake, and play music at a wedding I'd been asked not to attend. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. But now, sitting at my kitchen table with that invitation and that note, feeling that cold clarity settling into my bones, I realized something. My daughter had made a miscalculation. She'd thought money was what mattered. She thought if she could just pay enough, hire the right vendors, create the perfect aesthetic, she could erase where she came from. But she'd forgotten something fundamental about community, about loyalty, about the kind of relationships that money can't buy and social climbing can't replace. She'd forgotten that the people she'd hired were my people first. And in Southside Chicago, loyalty means something. I made the first call at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks before the wedding. Lorraine Jackson answered on the second ring, her voice bright with the pleasure of an unexpected friend calling. "Rose, girl, I was just thinking about you. How you doing?" "I'm okay, Lorraine. You busy?" "Never too busy for you. What's up?" I told her. Not everything. Not about the $47,000, or the years of sacrifice, or the slow, painful realization that I'd raised a daughter who was ashamed of me. Just the relevant parts. That Sophia was getting married. That she'd hired petals and stems for the flowers through an event planner. That she'd asked me not to come to the wedding. That I'd just spent my life savings on an event I was told would be awkward if I attended. Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. Then, "She asked you not to come? To your own daughter's wedding?" "She thought it would be better, for everyone." "Better for who?" "The Caldwells, Senator Caldwell's colleagues, the society pages." Another silence. Then Lorraine's voice, cold in a way I'd never heard it. "And she hired me? For flowers?" $12,000 worth. Roses and peonies and garden roses, whatever those are. "And she didn't tell me who she was? Who her mama was?" "No." "Rose." Lorraine's voice was tight now. "I've known you 18 years. 18 years. You helped me when DeAndre got sick and I couldn't pay my bills. You never once made me feel small for needing help. You're family to me. Family." "I know." "So here's what's going to happen. I'm not doing her flowers." Lorraine. I'm not doing flowers for a woman who's so busy climbing she forgot to look down at the people who lifted her up. I don't care how much money she's offering. Some things matter more than money. The contract. I'll handle the contract. There are ways. Weather delays, supply chain issues, family emergencies. She'll get her deposit back minus processing fees, but I'm not doing it. And Rose? Yeah? Who else did she hire? I told her. Patricia and the Sisters' Kitchen for catering, Sweet Mercy for the cake, Smooth Sounds for the band. Everyone you know, Lorraine said quietly. Everyone I know. Does she understand what she's done? I don't think she thinks about it at all. Then it's time she learned. Lorraine hung up, promising to make some calls. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Patricia Washington, then Gloria, then May, then Deacon Miller, then Jerome Tucker. Each conversation the same pattern. Shock that I'd been uninvited to my own daughter's wedding. Fury that she'd hired them without acknowledging our connection. And then, without me asking, without me suggesting, without me even hinting. I'm not doing it, Rose. She can find another caterer. I don't bake cakes for people who treat their mama like that. My band don't play for people who don't know about respect. One by one they called. One by one they canceled. Not with drama, not with confrontation. Just with professional courtesy and contractual provisions, and the kind of polite withdrawal that leaves no room for argument. Supply chain issues, scheduling conflicts, family emergencies, deposits returned, contracts terminated. All perfectly legal, all perfectly final. I sat at my kitchen table, watching my phone light up with texts and calls, watching my community circle around me the way I'd circled around them for 40 years. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Protected, valued, seen. My daughter had wanted a wedding without me. She was about to get something very different. The first call from Sophia came 4 days later, on a Monday evening. I was folding laundry at the shop, meditation work, the kind of repetitive task that lets your mind wander while your hands stay busy, when my phone buzzed. Sophia's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hi, baby." "Mom." Her voice was tight, stressed, the carefully cultivated polish cracking around the edges. "Mom, did you talk to the florist?" "Which florist?" "Petals and Stems, the one you recommended. She canceled on me, said there were supply chain issues, that she couldn't fulfill the order. But Mom, the wedding is in 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks. I can't find another florist who does that style, who has the connections for garden roses, who—" "That's terrible, honey. I'm sure you'll figure it out." "Did you talk to her?" The question hung in the air between us. "Why would I talk to her?" "Because she's your friend, because you've known her forever. Because this seems like a really convenient coincidence that she cancels right after I sent you the invitation." "The invitation where you asked me not to come?" Silence. Then, "Mom, it's not about you. It's about the optics, about what works for Preston's family. They're very traditional, very uncomfortable with the idea that the bride's mother owns a laundromat in Southside Chicago. That's not fair, isn't it? Mom, I need you to call her. Explain that there was a misunderstanding. Get her to honor the contract." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because, baby, Lorraine Jackson makes her own decisions. And if she decided she doesn't want to do your flowers, that's between you and her." "You did talk to her." "I told her you were getting married. I told her you'd hired her. I told her—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I told her I wouldn't be attending." "And she canceled because of that?" "She canceled because she wanted to. People make choices, Sophia. You made yours, she made hers." "This is unbelievable. Mom, do you have any idea what this wedding costs? What's at stake? Preston's father is announcing his presidential campaign the month after we get married. This wedding is going to be in every society page, every political blog, every—" "Then you should have thought of that before you asked me to stay home." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else. Power, maybe. Or just the simple satisfaction of finally drawing a line. The second call came 2 days later, Wednesday afternoon. I was at the shop, steam rising from the pressing machine, the familiar smell of heated fabric filling the air. "Mom, the caterer canceled." No greeting, no pleasantries, just panic, raw and undisguised. "Which caterer?" "Sister's Kitchen. They said there was a family emergency, that they couldn't do the wedding. But Mom, they were perfect. Their tasting was incredible. The menu was approved by the Caldwells, and now I have to start over with less than 2 weeks to—" "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Of course I am. I don't want your wedding to be ruined, Sophia." "Just incomplete?" "I didn't make them cancel." "But you talked to them." "I talked to a lot of people. That's what happens when you're part of a community for 40 years. This is revenge. This is you punishing me for— For what? For asking me not to come to your wedding? For being ashamed of where you come from? For hiring all my friends and not telling them who you were? I'm not ashamed of you." "Aren't you?" Silence. Then, quietly, "The Caldwells they have expectations, standards, and I didn't want to have to explain." "Explain what? That your mother washes clothes for a living? That you grew up in Southside instead of Greenwich? That you're black? That's not fair. Tell me which part isn't true." She hung up on me. I stood there with the phone in my hand, steam still rising around me, and I felt that coldness settle deeper. I wasn't angry. Anger is hot, explosive, temporary. This was something else. This was a door closing, slowly, firmly, finally. The third call came on Friday, morning this time, early. The kind of early that means someone hasn't slept. "The baker canceled." "Oh, Sophia." "And the band, and the photographer, and Mom, everyone is canceling. Every single vendor you know, every person I hired, they're all backing out with some excuse about scheduling or supply chains or family emergencies. But they're all your friends, all of them. And they're doing this because you asked them to. I didn't ask anyone to do anything. You didn't have to. You just had to tell them I didn't want you at my wedding. You knew exactly what would happen. You knew they'd choose you over me. They made their own choices, based on information you gave them. The truth, Sophia. I gave them the truth, that's all. You're ruining my wedding. No, baby, you did that yourself when you decided I wasn't good enough to attend. I never said. You didn't have to say it. The note said it. Your presence might create awkwardness, our situation, like I'm a problem to be managed instead of your mother. I heard her breath catch, heard the tears she was trying to hold back. Mom, please fix this. Call them, tell them whatever you need to tell them. I'll change the note. I'll send you a new invitation. You can come to the wedding. Can I? Yes, of course you can. I was wrong. I was stupid. Mom, please. The wedding is in 8 days. 8 days. I can't find new vendors. I can't start over. The Caldwells are going to think I'm incompetent. Preston's mother already thinks I'm not. She stopped. Not what? Not appropriate. Not from the right background. Not good enough for her son? Silence. And you thought if you just hid me away, if you just erased where you came from, she'd accept you? I thought it would be easier. For who? For everyone. Not for me. Mom. Sophia, I gave you $47,000. Every penny I'd saved for 25 years. I gave you everything. And you gave me a note telling me to stay home. So no, I'm not going to call my friends and ask them to work your wedding. They made their choice. I respect that choice. And you're going to have to live with yours. So that's it? You're just going to let my wedding fall apart? I'm not letting anything happen. I'm just not fixing what you broke. I hate you. The words came out strangled, childish, the last weapon she had. I know, I said softly, but someday maybe you'll understand. I hung up, and I sat in my small office at the back of the laundromat, surrounded by the smell of detergent and steam, and I cried. Not for the wedding that was falling apart, but for the daughter I'd lost long before any of this started. For the little girl who used to think I was magic because I could get grass stains out of white jeans. For the teenager who'd hugged me so tight on her first day of high school, whispering, "Thank you for everything." For the woman she might have been if she hadn't learned to be ashamed of the woman who raised her. I cried for all of that. And then I dried my tears, stood up, and got back to work. Because that's what you do when your heart breaks. You fold laundry, you help customers, you keep going. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, June 23rd, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I woke that morning in my small apartment, made coffee in my cracked Mr. Coffee machine, and sat at my wobbly kitchen table, watching the sun rise over 47th Street. I didn't get dressed up, didn't put on the dress I'd bought months ago, back when I still thought I'd be invited, back when I still believed my daughter loved me more than she loved status. Just jeans, a comfortable shirt, my regular Saturday clothes. At 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Lorraine. You doing okay today? I'm fine. Liar. You want company? No, but thank you. We all love you, you know. Me, Patricia, all of us. What we did, what we chose not to do, that wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. About not participating in something that disrespected you. I know. Good, because you need to know that. You need to know you're not alone. I do. Thank you. Call if you need anything at all. I promised I would. At 3:30, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Williams, this is Catherine Caldwell, Preston's mother. Her voice was clipped, cold, the kind of cold that comes from generations of practice at being polite while despising people. Mrs. Caldwell. I understand there have been some complications with the wedding vendors. So I've heard. I also understand that these complications are related to your relationship with said vendors. They made their own choices. Choices influenced by you. Choices based on respect, something your family might not understand. A sharp intake of breath. Mrs. Williams, I don't know what your daughter told you, but she told me I wasn't invited to her wedding. She told me my presence would create awkwardness. She told me I should sit this one out. Is that what you wanted to hear? Silence. Then, Sophia made that decision on her own. Did she? Or did you make it very clear that a laundromat owner from Southside Chicago wasn't the kind of family you wanted associated with your son's wedding? Especially not with Senator Caldwell's presidential campaign about to launch. That's a gross oversimplification. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You're ashamed of where my daughter comes from. She learned to be ashamed too, and now you're both dealing with the consequences. The consequences being that my son's wedding is falling apart 4 hours before it's supposed to start. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you made my daughter feel like she had to choose between her family and yours. We didn't make her. Yes, you did, and so did she. And now you get to stand in your garden in Greenwich, Connecticut, with your society friends and your political colleagues and your camera crews, and you get to explain why there are no flowers, no food, no cake, no music. You get to explain that the bride's family, the family you didn't think was good enough to attend, was actually the only family that mattered. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were steady, my heart was calm. I'd said what needed to be said. I didn't go to Greenwich, didn't drive the 3 hours to Connecticut to watch my daughter's wedding collapse. Didn't need to. Because Lorraine called me at 6:47 p.m., laughter in her voice. Rose, girl, you're not going to believe this. What happened? Jerome's cousin works for the Greenwich Times, society page photographer. He was there for the wedding. And there was no wedding. Well, there was a ceremony. Sophia and Preston got married by the Justice of the Peace in the Caldwell living room with about 10 people present. No flowers, no reception, no cake, no band. Just a rushed ceremony and a whole lot of uncomfortable rich people standing around wondering what happened to the garden wedding they'd been promised. Did he take pictures? Oh, honey, he took pictures. And you know what the best part is? What? Senator Caldwell's campaign manager was there. Had to explain to all the political reporters why the big society wedding they'd been invited to turned into a living room ceremony with grocery store flowers. The optics, Rose, the optics are terrible. I should have felt triumphant, should have felt vindicated, should have felt something other than this hollow sadness. Is Sophia okay? According to Jerome's cousin, she spent most of the evening crying in the bathroom. Preston's mother kept saying there must have been some misunderstanding with the vendors. Preston looked confused. The Caldwells looked furious. It was a disaster. Good, I said, but my voice was flat. You don't sound like you think it's good. I don't know what I think anymore. You think you did the right thing? I think I did the only thing I could do. I think I set a boundary. I think I refused to be erased. Whether that's right or wrong, I guess we'll see. She'll come around. Maybe, or maybe she won't. Maybe this is just who she is now. Someone who loves status more than family. Someone who learned to be ashamed of where she came from. You raised her better than that. I thought I did, but people make choices, Lorraine. And sometimes those choices take them so far away from who they were that you can't reach them anymore. You still love her. Of course I still love her. She's my daughter. But love isn't enough if it's only going one direction. Love isn't enough when the other person sees you as an obstacle instead of a mother. We talked for a few more minutes, and then I hung up and sat in my quiet apartment, looking at the photo on my refrigerator. Sophia at 16, in her prom dress, spinning in my living room, asking if she looked pretty. You're beautiful, baby. You really think so? I know so. I'd meant it then. I meant it now. But beauty had nothing to do with the person she'd become. Текущий объем – 9500 слов. Пишу финальный эпилог – еще 3-4 тысяч слов. Роузес решение о будущем. Последний разговор с София. Отъезд. Финальный образ. Продолжать? The wedding I paid for but wasn't invited to. Эпилог, часть 3, финал. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I put William's wash and fold up for sale. Not out of bitterness, not out of defeat, but because 40 years is a long time to do the same thing, and sometimes a door closing in one part of your life means a window opening in another. The realtor, a young woman named Keisha, who reminded me a little of Sophia before Sophia learned to be someone else, went through the space with professional interest, making notes on her tablet, calculating square footage and profit margins. This is a solid business, she said. Good location, loyal customer base, established reputation. You shouldn't have trouble finding a buyer. I hope not. Can I ask why you're selling? Most people who've been in business this long plan to hand it down to family. I looked around the laundromat. The machines I'd maintained for decades. The folding tables I'd replaced 3 times. The wall I'd painted myself in colors meant to feel cheerful even when the work was hard. I don't have family to hand it to, I said simply. That wasn't quite true. I had a daughter. Somewhere in Connecticut, living in a house I'd never seen, married to a man I barely knew, building a life that had no room for laundromat owners from Southside Chicago. I had a daughter, but she didn't have me. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. Well, Keisha said, her voice gentle with understanding she didn't voice, you've built something valuable here. Someone will be lucky to take it over. I signed the papers that afternoon. Listed price $450,000 for the business, building, and equipment. Not enough to retire rich, but enough to retire differently. Enough to leave. The call from Sophia came on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the wedding, 3 days after I'd accepted an offer on the laundromat. I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe hope, maybe curiosity, maybe just the stubborn love that doesn't know when to quit, made me pick up. Mom? Her voice was small, young. The voice of the daughter I remembered, not the woman she'd become. Hi, baby. She stopped, started again. I wanted to call and to apologize for everything, for the note, for asking you not to come, for being ashamed of me? Silence, then quietly. Yes. I sat down at my kitchen table, the one I'd be leaving behind when I moved, the one with the wobbly leg I'd never fixed because there was always tomorrow. Why now? I asked. Because Preston and we're having problems. His family, they blame me for the wedding disaster, say I should have vetted the vendors better, say I made them look bad in front of their political contacts. His mother barely speaks to me. And Preston, he doesn't understand why I'm so upset. He says it was just one day, that we're married now and that's what matters, but he doesn't. She stopped, and I heard the tears she was trying to swallow. He doesn't understand that it wasn't just one day, I said softly. It was supposed to be your day, the day you'd remember forever. And instead of remembering love and celebration, you remember disappointment and judgment and the consequences of choices you made to please people who were never going to be pleased anyway. Yes, she whispered. Exactly that. Sophia, why did you really call? Because I wanted to... Another pause. I wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything. About the Caldwells, about trying to erase where I came from, about being ashamed. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry.
The words I'd waited months to hear, the apology I'd imagined 1,000 times, and hearing it now, I felt nothing. Not anger, not triumph, not even relief. Just a kind of tired sadness, like finding a letter you'd been waiting for, but it arrived too late to matter. "Thank you for saying that," I said. Can you forgive me? Can you? Not will you. Can you? Like forgiveness was something I could simply grant, a switch I could flip to make everything go back to how it was before.
I already have forgiven you, baby. I forgave you the day you sent that note, the day you chose status over family, the day you learned to be ashamed of where you came from. I forgave all of it, because that's what mothers do. We forgive. Then why does it sound like goodbye? Because it was. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Because love doesn't mean accepting treatment that diminishes you. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and your child is to let them live the life they chose, even if that life doesn't include you. "I'm selling the laundromat," I said instead of answering her question. "What? Mom, no! That's your life. That's everything you built." "It was my life. But I'm 58 years old, Sophia. I've spent 40 years washing other people's clothes. Maybe it's time I do something for myself." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. That's the beautiful part. I don't know." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere warm, maybe. Somewhere I've never been. Somewhere that doesn't know me as the laundromat lady or the woman whose daughter married into Connecticut aristocracy. Just somewhere new." "I don't want you to go." "I know. But baby, you left me long before I decided to leave. You left the day you looked at me and saw embarrassment instead of family. You left the day you hired my friends and didn't tell them who you were. You left the day you chose the Caldwells over me. I'm just finally catching up." "Mom." "I love you, Sophia. I will always love you. But I can't be the mother you're ashamed of anymore. It's too heavy. It's been too heavy for too long. And I'm tired." What if I came to visit? What if we tried to fix this?" "Fix what? The fact that you wish I was someone else? The fact that everything I am, where I live, what I do, who I am, embarrasses you? You can't fix that with visits, baby. That's something you have to fix in yourself. And until you do, until you can look at me and feel pride instead of shame, love instead of obligation, there's nothing to fix between us." "So that's it? You're just leaving?" "I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving a life that doesn't fit anymore. There's a difference." "I need you, Mom." "No, baby. You need someone to fix your problems, someone to make things easier, someone to help you climb without reminding you where you came from. That's not the same as needing me. And I'm done being useful instead of loved." I heard her crying, really crying, the kind of tears that come from understanding something true and terrible. "I do love you," she said. "I know I haven't shown it. I know I've been terrible. But I do love you. I believe you. But love isn't enough if it comes with conditions, if it comes with shame, if it comes with the requirement that I make myself smaller so you can feel bigger. That's not love, Sophia. That's something else." "What if—" Her voice broke. "What if I never see you again?" "Then you'll survive. People do. And maybe someday, when you've figured out who you are without trying so hard to be someone else, we'll find each other again. Or maybe we won't. Either way, we'll both be okay." "Will we?" "We'll have to be." I wanted to say more. Wanted to tell her about all the nights I'd stayed up worrying about her, all the sacrifices I'd made gladly, all the love I'd poured into raising her alone in a world that made single motherhood harder than it needed to be. Wanted to tell her that she'd been my whole world for 28 years. My reason for working hard and dreaming big and believing that sacrifice meant something. Wanted to tell her that letting go felt like dying, like cutting off a piece of myself, like learning to breathe without half my lungs. But some things don't need to be said. Some things just need to be felt and released and carried forward in whatever form they take after breaking. I love you, Sophia. I love you too, Mom. I know. Goodbye, baby. I hung up before she could respond, and I sat in my small kitchen, in my small apartment, in my small life that had never been quite small enough for my daughter's ambitions. And I cried. For her. For me. For the relationship we might have had if the world hadn't taught her that where you come from matters less than where you're going. And then I dried my tears, made coffee in my cracked Mr. Coffee machine, and started packing. The laundromat sold 3 weeks later to a young couple from Hyde Park who had dreams and energy and the kind of optimism I remembered having once. I showed them how the machines worked, introduced them to the regular customers, explained the rhythm of the business. Busy on Mondays and Saturdays, slow on Wednesdays, always steady enough to survive if you showed up and cared and treated people right. You built something really special here, the woman, Janelle, said as we signed the final papers. I tried to. What are you going to do now? I'm not sure. Travel, maybe. See places I've never seen. Figure out who I am when I'm not someone's mother or someone's business owner. That sounds wonderful. It sounds terrifying, I said honestly. But maybe that's okay. Maybe 58 is young enough to be terrified of something new. She smiled. I think 58 is young enough for anything. I liked her. Liked them both. Liked the idea that Williams Wash and Fold would continue, would serve the community, would be run by people who cared about more than profit. It felt like passing something on, even if I wasn't passing it to my daughter, even if the legacy I'd built wouldn't bear my name. I left Chicago on a Thursday morning in October when the leaves were turning and the air held that particular Midwest crispness that makes you believe in seasons and change and the promise of something different just around the corner. My car, a used Honda Civic I'd bought with cash, the same way I'd bought everything my entire life, was packed with everything I owned that mattered. Clothes, photos, my grandmother's recipe box, the Mother's Day cup Sophia had made in 4th grade, paint chipping away but still readable. World's Best Mom. I'd kept it, not because I believed it anymore, but because it was true once, and truth matters even when it hurts. The apartment was empty. The laundromat had new owners. My friends had promised to visit wherever I landed, had hugged me tight and told me I was brave and strong and doing the right thing. I wasn't sure about any of that, but I knew I was doing the necessary thing, the thing I should have done years ago when I first noticed my daughter looking at me with something like embarrassment, the thing that felt like failure but might actually be freedom. I drove south, no destination in mind, just following the pull of warmer weather and unfamiliar roads. Past Indianapolis, past Louisville, past Nashville. Through Tennessee, where the mountains rose up green and ancient, where the accent changed and the food got spicier, and nobody knew me or my story, or the daughter who'd broken my heart by learning to be ashamed of her mother. I stopped in a small town in Georgia, Macon, because I was tired and the motel looked clean and there was a diner across the street advertising real Southern cooking. The waitress who served me was maybe 60, with gray hair and kind eyes, and the sort of comfortable presence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. "First time in Macon?" she asked, pouring coffee without asking if I wanted any. "First time." "Just passing through?" "I think so. Maybe not. I'm not sure yet." She smiled. "That's a good way to travel. No plans, no pressure, just seeing what feels right. Have you lived here your whole life? Born and raised. Moved away for a while. Came back when I realized home isn't always where you started. Sometimes it's where you choose to stay. That's wise. That's survival, she corrected gently. Sometimes you gotta leave to figure out what matters. Sometimes you gotta come back to remember. Sometimes you gotta start over completely. The trick is knowing which one you need. What if you don't know? Then you drive until you do. I ate slowly, tasting the food, feeling the warm Georgia evening wrap around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. No schedule, no expectations, no daughter waiting for me to be useful instead of loved. Just me, a motel room, and the wide open possibility of tomorrow. That's my story, dear listeners. The story of a wedding I paid for but wasn't invited to. The story of a daughter who learned to be ashamed and a mother who learned to let go. The story of $47,000 and 40 years of sacrifice, and the moment when sacrifice stops being noble and starts being self-destruction. I don't know if I did the right thing. I don't know if the wedding falling apart taught Sophia anything, or if it just made her resent me more. I don't know if she'll ever look at me without seeing embarrassment, without wishing I was someone else, someone richer or whiter or more acceptable to the Connecticut aristocracy she married into. I don't know if we'll ever find our way back to each other, but I know this. Some doors need to close before new ones can open. Some relationships need to end before you can begin the relationship with yourself. Some sacrifices need to stop before they consume everything you are. And sometimes, the bravest thing a mother can do isn't holding on. It's letting go. So I let go, and I drove south. And somewhere between Chicago and wherever I'm going, I started to feel something I haven't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but something close. Something like the first breath after being underwater too long. Something like possibility. Thank you for listening, dear friends. If this story touched you, please subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment, and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between love and self-respect? Have you ever let go of someone you loved because holding on was destroying you? Have you ever learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and someone else is to close a door, even when closing it breaks your heart? I'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't determined by how much you sacrifice, it's determined by how much you know your sacrifice is worth something. And if it isn't, if it's just being taken without gratitude, without respect, without love, then maybe it's time to stop giving. Maybe it's time to start living.